When Sofia stepped into the marble lobby of the Grand Monarch Hotel, she never imagined her simple cleaning uniform would trigger a chain of events that would leave an entire staff jobless and a billionaire sheikh rewriting the rules of justice. What happened next shocked everyone, including the hotel owner who thought he could crush an innocent woman. This is how one moment of cruelty changed everything and why his final decision left the entire city talking. Sofia Martinez had always been invisible. At 26, she moved through the world like a shadow, her presence barely registering in the consciousness of those around her. Every morning at 4:30, she would wake in her cramped studio apartment above Mrs. Chen's laundromat, the scent of industrial detergent and fabric softener seeping through the thin floorboards. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed because tomorrow I have saved something extra special for you. The walls were painted a faded yellow that had once been cheerful but now looked sickly under the harsh fluorescent light she couldn't afford to replace. Her daily routine never varied. She would dress quickly in her pressed but worn cleaning uniform, navy blue with white trim that she washed by hand every night to keep it presentable. The fabric had grown thin from years of washing, but Sofia took pride in its cleanliness. She would braid her dark hair into a tight knot at the base of her neck, apply the barest hint of lip balm, and slip on her comfortable walking shoes that had carried her through 3 years of early morning commutes. The walk to downtown took exactly 37 minutes. Sofia knew this because she had timed it obsessively during her first week of work, terrified of being late and losing the job that barely paid her rent but kept her fed. She would pass the sleeping city, watching windows glow with the warm light of families eating breakfast together, children getting ready for school, couples sharing coffee before starting their days. Sometimes she would pause at the windows of expensive boutiques, studying the elegant dresses and imagining what it might feel like to walk into a room and have people notice her for something other than the mop in her hands. Her workplace was the Grand Monarch Hotel, a towering testament to luxury that dominated 3 city blocks with its gleaming facade and gold-trimmed windows. The building rose 47 floors into the sky, each level more opulent than the last, culminating in penthouse suites that cost more per night than Sofia earned in 6 months. She had worked there for 3 years as part of the overnight cleaning crew, arriving when the last guests stumbled to their rooms and leaving before the breakfast crowd descended upon the restaurant. Sofia took secret pride in her work. While other cleaners rushed through their assigned floors, she moved methodically, ensuring every surface gleamed, every piece of furniture was precisely arranged, every bathroom sparkled. She had memorized the preferences of the regular guest without ever speaking to them. The businessman in Suite 2847 always left his newspapers folded in perfect quarters, so Sofia learned to arrange them exactly that way after cleaning his coffee table. The elderly woman in 3156 kept fresh flowers on her nightstand, and Sofia would adjust their positions so they caught the morning light streaming through the windows. The other members of the cleaning staff called her obsessive, but Mrs. Rodriguez, the head of housekeeping, had noticed Sofia's attention to detail. While she never praised her directly, she had begun assigning Sofia to the most important floors, the ones where celebrities and business moguls stayed during their visits to the city. It was the closest thing to recognition Sofia had ever received, and she treasured it like a precious gift. Her supervisor, Miguel Santos, was a kind man in his 50s who had worked at the hotel for over a decade. He treated his cleaning crew with dignity, never raising his voice or making them feel ashamed of their work. During their brief breaks, he would tell stories about his grandchildren or ask about Sofia's family, though she had little to share. Her parents had died in a car accident when she was 19, leaving her completely alone in the world except for an aunt who sent a Christmas card each year but had never invited Sofia to visit. The loneliness was the hardest part. Sofia would return to her small apartment each morning as the sun rose, exhausted from a night of physical labor but unable to sleep immediately. She would sit by her single window with a cup of instant coffee, watching the city wake up and wondering if anyone would notice if she simply disappeared. Her neighbors barely acknowledged her existence, and she had no friends to speak of. The closest thing she had to companionship was Mrs. Chen, who would occasionally offer her leftover dim sum and practice her English by describing the gossip from the laundromat. Her appearance had always been unremarkable. She was neither tall nor short, neither thin nor heavy, with features that blended into crowds without leaving an impression. Her dark eyes were kind but sad, reflecting a gentleness that had been tested by years of indifference from the world around her. She had learned to make herself smaller, to speak softly, to apologize for taking up space even when she had done nothing wrong. The few times she had attempted conversations with co-workers or customers in shops, she found herself stumbling over words, her cheeks burning with embarrassment at her perceived inadequacy. Money was always tight. After paying rent on her tiny apartment and buying the bare necessities for survival, Sofia had perhaps $50 left each month for anything beyond basic needs. She shopped at discount grocery stores, buying dented cans and day-old bread, stretching every meal to last as long as possible. Her wardrobe consisted of 3 changes of work clothes and 2 casual outfits that she had owned for years. She cut her own hair in the cracked mirror of her bathroom, watching YouTube tutorials on her ancient phone to learn basic trimming techniques. Despite her financial struggles, Sofia sent $20 every month to a children's charity she had discovered online. It was money she could barely afford to spare, but the thought of helping children who might feel as invisible as she did gave her a sense of purpose. She would write small notes with her donations, hoping that somehow her words might reach a child who needed to know that someone cared about their existence, even if that someone was a stranger working the night shift at a hotel. The Grand Monarch Hotel was owned by Harrison Webb, a man whose reputation for ruthlessness preceded him into every room he entered. At 52, he had built an empire of luxury properties across 5 countries, each one designed to cater to the ultra-wealthy while maximizing profit margins through careful cut-cutting in areas guests would never see. He was tall and imposing, with silver hair that was always perfectly styled and suits that cost more than most people's cars. His eyes were pale blue and calculating, constantly assessing the value of everything and everyone around him. Webb had inherited his first hotel from his father, but had multiplied that single property into a multinational corporation through a combination of business acumen and complete disregard for anyone who couldn't contribute to his bottom line. He was known for firing entire departments without warning, for refusing to provide healthcare benefits to part-time employees, and for maintaining the opulent facade of his hotels while paying the lowest possible wages to the people who actually made them function. The cleaning staff existed in a different universe from the guests they served. They moved through service corridors and freight elevators, invisible pathways that kept them separate from the marble lobbies and crystal chandeliers. Sofia had learned these hidden routes by heart, navigating the hotel's secret arteries like a ghost haunting the walls. She knew which elevators would take her to each floor without passing through guest areas, which stairwells were always empty, which supply closets held the materials she needed for her work. On quiet nights, when her work was nearly finished, Sofia would sometimes pause in doorways and peek into the grand ballrooms and elegant restaurants that she would never experience as anything other than an employee. She would imagine what it might feel like to walk across those polished floors in a beautiful dress, to sit at those linen-covered tables while someone served her carefully prepared meals, to feel important enough to deserve such luxury. The fantasies would last only moments before guilt would pull her back to reality and her waiting responsibilities. Her colleagues in the cleaning crew were mostly older women from immigrant families, working multiple jobs to support children and grandchildren. They shared stories during their brief breaks, talking about school plays and graduations, quinceañeras and first communions, family celebrations that filled their lives with meaning beyond their nighttime labor. Sofia would listen quietly, smiling at their joy, while feeling the ache of her own isolation. She had no stories to contribute, no family milestones to celebrate, no one waiting at home who cared whether she had a good day or a difficult one. The hotel's day shift employees lived in a different world. The concierges wore tailored uniforms and spoke multiple languages, greeting guests with warm smiles and detailed knowledge of the city's finest restaurants and cultural attractions. The front desk staff had college degrees in advanced computer training, managing reservations and special requests with polished professionalism. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. Even the restaurant servers were treated with more respect than the cleaning crew, their appearance carefully groomed to match the establishment's elegant atmosphere. Sofia had always understood her place in this hierarchy. She was part of the machinery that kept the hotel functioning, necessary but unremarkable, like the heating system or the plumbing. She performed her duties without complaint, collected her modest paycheck, and tried not to think about the vast gulf between her world and the world of the people she served. It was a sustainable existence, if not a happy one, and Sofia had convinced herself that sustainability was enough. The routine that had defined her life for 3 years was about to be shattered by a single moment of cruelty that would expose the true nature of the people she worked for and attract the attention of someone whose power could reshape her entire world. But on this particular Tuesday morning in November, as Sofia finished cleaning the 32nd floor and prepared to move on to her final section of the night, she had no idea that her invisible existence was about to become the center of a storm that would change everything she thought she knew about justice, dignity, and her own worth. The elevator descended silently toward the lobby level, carrying Sofia toward an encounter that would prove that sometimes the most ordinary people find themselves at the center of extraordinary events, and that true power lies not in wealth or position, but in the choice to stand up for what is right, even when everything seems stacked against you. The morning everything changed started like any other. Sofia had finished her rounds on the upper floors and was making her way through the main lobby to collect her final supplies from the storage room behind the front desk. It was 6:47 a.m., that quiet hour when the hotel existed in limbo between the night's last departures and the morning's first arrivals. The marble floors gleamed under the crystal chandeliers, reflecting Sofia's small figure as she pushed her cleaning cart across the vast space. She had done this walk hundreds of times before, always keeping her eyes down, always moving quickly to avoid drawing attention. The lobby was Harrison Webb's crown jewel, a cathedral of wealth designed to overwhelm visitors with its opulence. Towering columns supported a vaulted ceiling painted with scenes of mythological grandeur, while Persian rugs worth more than Sofia's annual salary covered strategic sections of the polished stone floor. This morning, however, Sofia's routine was interrupted by an unusual sight. A small child, perhaps 5 years old, sat crying near the concierge desk. The little girl wore expensive clothes and had tears streaming down her face as she clutched a stuffed elephant that looked well-loved and slightly worn. Sofia glanced around for the child's parents but saw no one nearby. The front desk staff wouldn't arrive for another hour, and the concierge station was unmanned. Sofia's instinct was to keep walking. She wasn't supposed to interact with guests, and certainly not unsupervised children who might belong to wealthy families with lawyers and lawsuits. But the sound of the little girl's sobs tugged at something deep in Sofia's chest, a memory of her own childhood fears and the comfort she had desperately needed during her darkest moments after her parents' death. Against her better judgment, Sofia parked her cart and approached the child carefully. She knelt down to the girl's eye level, her voice gentle and soft. "Hello, sweetheart. Are you lost?" The little girl looked up with wide brown eyes that reminded Sofia of her younger self, frightened and alone in a world that felt too big and too cold. "I can't find my daddy," the little girl whispered, her lower lip trembling. "He went to get coffee and he said to wait here, but that was a long time ago and I'm scared." Sofia's heart broke for this lost little soul. She looked around again, hoping to spot a frantic parent,
but the lobby remained empty except for the distant sound of delivery trucks unloading supplies at the service entrance. "What's your name, honey?" Sofia asked, sitting cross-legged on the expensive rug without caring about the impropriety of her position. "I'm Emma," the girl replied, wiping her nose with the back of her hand. "This is Peanut," she added, holding up the stuffed elephant. "He's scared too." Sofia smiled, the first genuine smile she had felt in weeks. "Well, Emma, I think Peanut is very brave, just like you. Let's help you find your daddy, okay?" She was trying to decide whether to call security or take Emma to the front desk area, when she heard the sharp click of expensive shoes against marble. Harrison Webb emerged from the private elevator that led to his penthouse office, his face already set in the permanent scowl he wore when dealing with anything that disrupted his carefully ordered world. He was dressed in a charcoal gray suit that probably cost more than Sofia made in 3 months, his silver hair perfectly styled despite the early hour. His pale eyes swept the lobby and immediately fixed on the scene before him with undisguised disgust. "What the hell is this?" Webb's voice echoed through the empty space, causing both Sofia and Emma to startle. The little girl immediately began crying harder, frightened by the angry stranger advancing toward them. Sofia instinctively moved closer to Emma, her protective instincts overriding her fear of confrontation. "Sir, this child is lost," Sofia began, trying to keep her voice steady. "I was just trying to help her find her father." But Webb wasn't listening. His focus was entirely on what he perceived as a violation of his hotel's pristine image. "You," he pointed at Sofia with one manicured finger, "are sitting on a $50,000 Persian rug in your filthy uniform, contaminating my lobby with your presence." His voice grew louder with each word, drawing the attention of the few early morning staff members who were beginning to arrive for their shifts. "Do you have any idea what kind of establishment this is? What our guests pay for the privilege of staying here?" Sofia felt her cheeks burn with shame and anger. "I was helping this child, sir. She's frightened and alone." She stood up slowly, her legs shaking from both fear and indignation. Emma clung to her leg, hiding behind Sofia's modest frame, as Webb continued his tirade. "This is exactly the problem with hiring people like you. No sense of propriety, no understanding of boundaries. You think because you mop our floors, you have the right to play pretend in spaces reserved for your betters?" The cruelty in his voice was like a physical blow, each word designed to wound and humiliate. A small crowd had gathered now. Day shift employees had arrived early and were witnessing the spectacle with a mixture of horror and fascination. Some looked away in embarrassment, others stared with the morbid curiosity that comes from watching someone else's destruction. Sofia felt exposed and vulnerable, her worst fears about her place in the world being confirmed in the most public way. "Sir, please," Sofia tried again, her voice barely above a whisper. "The child was crying. I couldn't just walk away."
But Webb was beyond reason, caught up in his own sense of righteous indignation and the intoxicating power of having an audience for his cruelty. "You couldn't walk away," Webb laughed, but there was no humor in the sound. "You're paid to clean toilets and empty trash cans, not to play nursemaid to guests' children. The fact that you can't understand the difference between your role and your delusions shows exactly why people like you will never amount to anything." The words hit Sofia like physical blows. "People like you." The phrase contained all the dismissiveness and contempt that she had felt from the world her entire life, but hearing it spoken so clearly, so publicly, was devastating. She felt tears threatening, but refused to give Webb the satisfaction of seeing her break down completely. "Look at her," Webb continued, addressing his growing audience as if Sofia wasn't standing right there. "This is what happens when you hire people out of misguided charity. They don't understand their place, they don't respect boundaries, and they certainly don't have the intelligence to make appropriate decisions." His words carried the weight of absolute authority, the confidence of a man who had never been challenged or contradicted. Emma was crying harder now, terrified by the angry man and confused by the situation she had inadvertently caused. Sofia knelt down again and whispered softly, "It's okay, sweetheart. None of this is your fault." But Webb's rage had reached a crescendo, and her gentle words only seemed to inflame him further. "Don't you dare continue this charade," he roared. "Security!" His voice boomed through the lobby, summoning the hotel's security guards who came running from their station near the main entrance. "I want this woman removed from the premises immediately. She's terminated, effective immediately, and I want her banned from ever setting foot in any of my properties again." The security guards looked uncomfortable, but moved toward Sofia anyway. They knew better than to question Webb's orders, regardless of how arbitrary or cruel they seemed. Sofia felt the world tilting around her as the reality of her situation became clear. She was about to lose her job, her only source of income, because she had tried to comfort a frightened child. "Please, Mr. Webb," she said, her voice breaking despite her efforts to remain composed. "I need this job. I was only trying to help." But her pleading only seemed to amuse him, bringing a cold smile to his thin lips. "You should have thought about that before you decided to embarrass my establishment," he replied with savage satisfaction. "Consider this a lesson in knowing your place. People like you are replaceable, forgettable, and ultimately worthless except for the menial labor you provide." Just as the security guards reached Sofia, preparing to escort her from the building in the most humiliating way possible, the main entrance doors opened with a whisper of hydraulic precision. A man entered the lobby with the kind of presence that immediately commanded attention, though he moved with quiet confidence rather than Webb's aggressive bluster. He was tall and elegantly dressed in a way that spoke of understated wealth rather than flashy displays. His skin was olive-toned, his dark hair perfectly styled, and his movements possessed the fluid grace of someone accustomed to power. Most striking were his eyes, dark and intelligent, taking in the scene before him with sharp assessment. This was Prince Khalil al-Rashid, though his identity was not yet known to anyone in the lobby. "Excuse me," he said, his voice carrying a slight accent that suggested refined international education. "Is there a problem here?" His tone was polite, but held an undertone of authority that made everyone in the lobby pause their activities to listen. Webb, initially annoyed by the interruption, quickly shifted his demeanor when he took in the newcomer's obvious wealth and bearing. This was clearly a potential high-value guest, someone who could contribute significantly to the hotel's bottom line. His smile became obsequious, his voice taking on the fawning tone he reserved for people who could benefit him financially. "No problem at all, sir," Webb replied smoothly, "just dealing with a minor staff issue, nothing that should concern our distinguished guests." He gestured dismissively toward Sofia as if she were an inconvenient piece of furniture that needed to be moved out of sight. But Prince Khalil's attention remained focused on the scene before him. He had witnessed Webb's tirade from the moment he entered the lobby, had heard every cruel word, and seen the tears in both Sofia and Emma's eyes. His expression remained neutral, but those who knew him well would have recognized the dangerous stillness that came over him when he encountered injustice. "I see," the prince said quietly. "And what exactly was this staff member's transgression?" His question was directed at Webb, but his eyes never left Sofia's face. She stood frozen between the security guards, her uniform wrinkled, her dignity in tatters, but something in her expression caught his attention. Despite her obvious distress, there was a core of strength there, a refusal to be completely broken by Webb's cruelty. Webb, eager to justify his actions to this wealthy stranger, launched into an elaborate explanation of Sofia's supposed crimes. This cleaning woman overstepped her boundaries by interacting with guests in the main lobby. She was sitting on priceless furnishings in her work clothes, creating an inappropriate spectacle that could damage our reputation for excellence. Prince Khalil listened without comment, his expression giving nothing away. When Webb finished his explanation, the prince looked down at Emma, who was still clinging to Sofia's leg and crying softly. "And this child?" he asked quietly. "Obviously a guest's daughter," Webb replied with practiced smoothness. "Our staff are trained to immediately contact the front desk or security in these situations, not to take matters into their own hands."
His explanation sounded reasonable on the surface, but the prince had seen enough of human nature to recognize the hollow ring of justification masquerading as policy. The prince knelt down to Emma's level, his movements gentle and reassuring. "Hello, little one. I'm Khalil. Can you tell me what happened?"
His voice held such kindness that Emma loosened her grip on Sofia's leg and looked up at him with curiosity rather than fear. "I was lost," Emma whispered. "The nice lady was helping me find my daddy. Then the mean man started yelling." Her simple, honest words carried more weight than all of Webb's elaborate justifications. Prince Khalil stood slowly, his eyes never leaving Webb's face. When he spoke, his voice remained quiet, but there was steel beneath the silk. "I see. So this woman was fired for showing kindness to a frightened child?" The question hung in the air like a blade waiting to fall. Webb sensed that the conversation was not going in his favor, but his arrogance prevented him from backing down. "Our policies exist for good reason, sir. Maintaining appropriate boundaries between staff and guests is essential for preserving the exclusive atmosphere our clientele expects." "Exclusive atmosphere," Prince Khalil repeated thoughtfully. "Tell me, Mr. Webb, is it? What exactly makes an atmosphere exclusive? Is it the marble and crystal, or is it the way human beings treat one another?" His questions sounded philosophical, but everyone in the lobby could sense the danger underlying his calm demeanor. Webb's face reddened again, this time with embarrassment rather than anger. He wasn't accustomed to being questioned or challenged, especially not in his own establishment. "I'm sure I don't understand your meaning, sir. If you're here to check in, I'd be happy to personally ensure you receive our finest accommodations." "Oh, I think you understand perfectly," Prince Khalil replied. "You've just demonstrated that your definition of exclusivity involves the public humiliation of employees who show basic human decency. Is that the kind of establishment you're proud to operate?" The lobby had grown completely silent. Staff members who should have been preparing for the morning rush instead stood transfixed by the confrontation unfolding before them. Sofia remained frozen between the security guards, hardly daring to breathe as she watched this stranger challenge the man who had just destroyed her life. Webb realized that he was losing control of the situation and decided to assert his authority more forcefully. "Sir, while I appreciate your interest, this is an internal matter. I'm the owner of this establishment, and I'll handle my staff as I see fit." His voice carried the arrogance of a man accustomed to having the final word in every situation. Prince Khalil smiled then, but it wasn't a pleasant expression. "The owner," he repeated softly. "How interesting." He reached into his jacket and withdrew his phone, pressing a single number with deliberate precision. The call was answered immediately. "Marcus?" he said without preamble. "I need you to purchase the Grand Monarch Hotel. Yes, the entire property. I want the transaction completed within the hour." He paused, listening to the response. "Price is irrelevant. Make them an offer they cannot refuse." Webb's face had gone pale as the implications of the conversation became clear. "Wait," he stammered. "Who are you? You can't just buy a hotel because you don't like how I run it." Prince Khalil ended his call and looked at Webb with the kind of calm that comes before a storm. "I am Prince Khalil al-Rashid of the Al-Rashid Emirates, and you have just provided me with a compelling demonstration of how not to treat people who have done nothing wrong except show kindness to a child." The name hit Webb like a physical blow. The al-Rashid family was legendary in business circles, with wealth that made his own fortune look like pocket change. They owned hotels, airlines, oil companies, and real estate across 6 continents. If Prince Khalil wanted to buy the Grand Monarch Hotel, there wasn't a force on earth that could stop him. "Your Highness," he began, his voice cracking with sudden panic, "I'm sure we can resolve this misunderstanding. If I was too hasty in my judgment, perhaps we can reconsider." His transformation from arrogant tyrant to desperate supplicant was complete and pathetic. But Prince Khalil had already turned his attention back to Sofia. "Miss," he said gently, "what is your name?" His voice held such kindness that Sofia felt tears threatening again, but this time they weren't tears of humiliation. "Sofia Martinez, Your Highness," she whispered.
unsure of the proper way to address royalty, but trying to show respect to the man who had stepped into her nightmare and changed everything. "Sofia," he repeated, making her name sound beautiful and important. "I apologize that you had to endure such treatment. No one should be punished for showing compassion." He turned back to Webb, his expression hardening. "You're fired." Webb's mouth fell open in shock. "You can't fire me from my own hotel." But as he spoke, he knew the words were hollow. If the prince was serious about purchasing the property, Webb's ownership would be meaningless within hours.
Actually, Prince Khalil replied with quiet satisfaction, I can, and I just did. Security, please escort Mr. Webb from the premises. He's no longer welcome in this establishment. The same security guards who had been preparing to remove Sofia now found themselves in the surreal position of removing their former boss instead. As Webb was led away, still protesting and making empty threats, Prince Khalil turned his attention back to Sofia and Emma. "Now then," he said with a warm smile, "let's find this young lady's father." He gestured to one of the arriving day shift managers. "Please check the restaurant and coffee shop. A gentleman whose daughter has been missing for some time is probably quite worried." Within minutes, a frantic man came running into the lobby, relief flooding his face when he saw Emma. "Daddy!" the little girl cried, running into his arms. As father and daughter reunited, the man looked around in confusion at the crowd that had gathered. "What happened?" he asked. "I was only gone for 20 minutes. There was a problem with the coffee machine and I got stuck waiting." Sofia stepped forward hesitantly, still not entirely believing that her world had just been turned completely upside down. "Your daughter was scared when she couldn't find you," she explained softly. "I just stayed with her until you came back." The man's eyes filled with gratitude as he realized what Sofia had done. "Thank you," he said with genuine emotion. "Emma means everything to me. I can't imagine how frightened she must have been." He looked around at the dispersing crowd, sensing that something significant had occurred, but not understanding the full scope of what had transpired. Prince Khalil approached them both. "Your daughter is very brave," he told Emma's father, "and she was very fortunate to have someone like Ms. Martinez looking after her." He turned to Sofia with a smile that transformed his entire face. "I believe you mentioned needing this job?" Sofia nodded, still not entirely convinced that any of this was really happening. "Yes, Your Highness, this was my only income." The admission made her feel vulnerable, but she sensed that honesty was important to this man who had just changed her entire life. "Well then," Prince Khalil said with satisfaction, "let me offer you a new position. I'm going to need a general manager for this hotel, someone who understands that true hospitality comes from the heart, not from a policy manual. The salary would be considerably more than you were making before." His offer hung in the air like a gift too precious to accept. Sofia stared at him in shock. "Your Highness, I'm just a cleaning woman. I don't know anything about running a hotel." Her honesty was automatic, but the prince's smile only grew warmer. "You know the most important thing. You know how to treat people with dignity and compassion. The rest can be learned." He paused, considering. "Of course, if you prefer, I could simply ensure you have your old job back with a significant raise and better working conditions." "No," Sofia said quietly, surprising herself with her decisiveness. "If you truly believe I can learn, then I'd like to try." Her voice grew stronger as she spoke. "I'd like to make sure that no employee here ever has to fear being humiliated for doing the right thing." Prince Khalil's approval was evident in his expression. "Excellent. I'll have my people handle the transition details. In the meantime, why don't you take the rest of the day off? Tomorrow will be the beginning of a new chapter for both you and this hotel." As the crowd finally began to disperse and the hotel returned to its normal morning routine, Sofia found herself alone with Prince Khalil in the vast lobby where her world had nearly ended just an hour before. "Your Highness," she said hesitantly, "why did you do this? You don't even know me." Prince Khalil was quiet for a moment, looking around at the opulent surroundings that had been the scene of such cruelty. I've been blessed with wealth and power, but those gifts are meaningless unless they're used to make the world a little more just, a little more kind. Today I saw someone being punished for showing compassion, and I couldn't allow that to stand." He smiled at her then, and Sofia felt something she had never experienced before. The absolute certainty that she was valued, that her existence mattered, that her instinct to help a frightened child had not just been right, but heroic in its simplicity. "Besides," Prince Khalil added with a twinkle in his dark eyes, "I have a feeling you're going to prove that the best leaders are those who lead with their hearts. This hotel is going to be something special under your management." As Sofia walked out of the Grand Monarch Hotel that morning, no longer an invisible cleaning woman, but the future general manager of one of the city's most prestigious establishments, she carried with her the knowledge that sometimes justice does prevail, that kindness can be rewarded, and that a single moment of compassion can change not just one life, but an entire world. Up next, you've got two more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out.